Hello, Helen here. Today's card's going to be using a technique called Emboss Resist. It's quite a almost magical technique. I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to be using this stamp set by Altenew called Persian Motif, and I'm going to be stamping it on a card panel with Versamark watermark ink and then white embossing powder. Now you can't see any of the design until I go to do the blending. Now what I'm going to be doing is stamping in a diagonal area at the bottom of the card and also in the top left hand corner. So I'm going to leave sort of like a diagonal panel in the centre that's not got the stamping. So once again I'm doing the stamping with the Versamark ink and then putting the embossing powder on every couple of stampings just so I can see where I've stamped, because it's really hard to see on the white card. So once I've got all the stamping and the embossing powder on, I can heat it all with my heat gun just to make sure that all the embossing powder is melted, and then I'm ready to start my ink blending. Now this is where the magic happens. I'm going to start blending with my mini blending tool and distress inks. I'm using picked raspberry, salty ocean, wilted violet, and I ended up getting a little bit of blueprint sketch, and I've just done patches of the colour and blended them together. And you suddenly, once you start doing that, see the embossing starting to come through, just like magic. Now the secret with blending is to dab most of the ink off the side of onto your craft mat, and just with a very light hand bring it in from the craft mat onto your card. You really need to build up layers to get it darker. You can't really go pressing really hard, because that's when you get blending tool marks and sort of smudges and dark patches. Now you'll see I keep wiping off the ink off my craft mat, especially when I'm changing colours. It's to make sure that you don't contaminate the colours as you're doing them and get them mixed up, because you can sometimes get quite muddy colours if you do that. I also go back and re-blend some of the previous colours just to make sure that I get a really nice blend between the colours. Now that I've got my the inking done of my panel, I'm going to get the sentiment ready. I'm using this Poppy Stamps Fancy Thanks die. It's going to go about here on the card. So I'm going to cut out 3 of them in black card, and then I'm going to glue them together, which will make a chipboard type sentiment. To do the gluing of the sentiment, I've left the third one in the card, into the negative part, and I'm just going to use that as the guide so that I can get the next 2 layers glued on top and sitting just in the right place, and then I'll take the whole thing out of the piece of card when I've finished. Now that my thanks sentiment's ready, I've trimmed down the panel so that it fits on my card base, with just leaving a little strip down the left hand side, and I'm just going to put some black and white striped washi tape just down, just to give a little bit of a contrast. Once my thanks sentiment's finished, I'm going to stamp a added sentiment to go with it. The stamp set, Paper Extra stamp set's got 2 versions of Just a Note to Say with different lettering, so I'm just deciding which one I like the best. I'm actually only going to be stamping a note to say, and then it will say thanks. So I'm going to line it up on the MISTI using the acetate grid that I downloaded from my Sweet Petunia, and then that makes sure that my sentiment's nice and straight, and then I'm stamping it with VersaFine Onyx black ink and clear embossing powder. To stamp the part of the message that I want and to mask off the just word that I didn't want, I'm just using a scrap of paper just over where it's going to fall on the card, just so that it stamps on the paper rather than the card, and that way I don't have to do any fancy masking. Once I've stamped the sentiment, I can then stick the panel down onto my card base and then stick the thanks underneath the stamped sentiment, and that's the card finished. I'll leave you with some photos of the close-ups of the card. Thanks for joining me today. Please subscribe if you'd like to see next week's project. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.